Okay, let's practice a few more techniques and try to understand how it works a little bit better than the book showed. So I had you download two files from Blackboard. The second one was called colorcorrectionpics.zip. So in Bridge, in your downloads folder, you probably see the zipped file like this. Double click on it and it will make you an unzipped folder of the same name. So color correction pics zip, you need it unzipped. And when you get it unzipped and have a folder of the same name, go ahead and open that. And we're just going to take a look at some of these images in here. Just going to scroll through them and you can see that they have color issues. And we're going to learn how to fix these better. All right. First one I want you to open is the one called Flowers JPEG. So double click on that and open it in Photoshop. And to understand color real briefly, the color mode that we're in, you see up in the tab up here, RGB. And I told you guys briefly, and I don't know how far you are in Design Fundamentals if you're on color yet, but red, green, blue, RGB color mode is how we see color on anything that's backlit. So screens, TVs, phones, iPads, anything web-based is being illuminated from behind with red, green, and blue pixels of light, and those blend together to make everything. So in your layers panel down here at the right, you have three other potential tabs, or two other tabs. Channels is the one that I want you to look at. Right now what you're seeing is the composite channel of a red light, a green light, and a blue light all shining through to make this image. I want you to turn off the eyeball next to three of them, but just leave on the blue one at the bottom. What this shows you is this is kind of like a film that goes, the red, green, and blue lights are behind it, and then this is the film that it hits. So right now, blue light is only allowed to shine through where we see white. Okay, that's the only place that blue light comes through, and when we look at the image, that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. If we go back to this, here's blue light. Whoops, just this one. If we turn that one off and turn on just green, green light is allowed to show through wherever there's white or tints of gray, but it's completely blocked where there's black. Green light can't get through there. Also red light. Turn on just that one. Red light can come through in any white or grayish area, but it's blocked where we see black. So if you put on the red light and then the green light and the blue light, you get the whole thing, the composite channel. That's how color works on screens. I'd like you to go up to Image and then Mode. And you can see that we're looking at this in RGB color. Some other options are Grayscale, where it just sucks all the color out, and CMYK. This is the one that's print. I want you to switch to that. And you get a warning that says, you are about to convert to CMYK using this particular profile. This may not be what you intended. Are you sure? We're going to say yes, and I want you to watch the colors of the purple leaves when you do it. If you didn't see it, do a Command Z over and over, or Command Z to undo. And then go ahead and do the redo the last color. Shift Command Z brings us back. Do you see the change in color in the purple? Okay, we're now in CMYK mode. Now when you look down here, this is printing mode. This has nothing to do with how you see things on a screen ever again. This is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or K registration. It's kind of a muddled brown. If we mix those three inks together, we get muddled brown. So registration is added, like a dark blackish ink, to help make a true black. So we now have 4 different channels. And again, if we turn those off, and one by one light them up, here is the black channel. This is opposite of light. We're not blocking light or letting light through. In this case, think of it as a rubber stamp. Whatever is black is the part on the rubber stamp that comes down and touches the black pad of ink and gets stamped down. That's your first plate in the commercial printing, is your black plate. Exactly on top of it comes your yellow plate. Again, anything that's black is the lowest part of the rubber stamp, the part that hits the ink and gets placed down and stacked up. So that's what the plate looks like that the yellow ink is applied to on a commercial press. Turn that one off and just look at magenta. That's what the plate looks like. If it's gray, it's getting a little bit of magenta ink. If it's white, it's not picking up any. If it's black, it's the lowest part of the stamp that's stamping down. So when you add, and cyan is the other one. So when you add a stamp of cyan, and then on top of it you add magenta, and on top of it you add yellow, and on top of it you add that black, this is what your 4 plates look like in commercial printing. The reason that we lost that cool look in the purple is because we don't have enough inks. They're a physical thing that gets mixed together like paint. We don't have enough. Inks can't replicate what you see with your human eye in all situations. So there is no commercial ink that matches that same iridescent version that we saw on screen. Yes, we could use metallic paints and other things and get to it. If you're working with a commercial printer, you can get to it. But in general, if you're showing your client that first version on the screen over and over and over, and then you hand them the brochure and it looks like this, they're going to be like, what happened? So you have to be careful to show them the reality of how it's going to print, that CMYK version. All right, that was just a crash course in that. Let's close out that file and not save it. And let's do some color correcting with pictures that actually look better when we're done, unlike the book. Go back to Bridge, and in this folder that we downloaded, I want you to scroll down to Scott and Danielle and open that in Photoshop. What color space are we working with on this image?
RGB.
Yep, RGB. You can see it up here in the tab. So this is an image. Again, our digital cameras record in RGB. The only time that we switch to CMYK is when we're going to do commercial printing. Otherwise, we tend to work in RGB mode because we're working on a screen with backlit. It's showing us color using light. So we only switch when we're done with this file and we get it looking how we want. Our last step, if it's going to a commercial printer, would be to transform it to CMYK, and then if we see issues, tweak those. Okay? Most things look the same, they just look a little bit more vivid and bright on a screen versus on paper. So here are these two people. We know it's an RGB file. And if I asked you what kind of a color cast is on here, what guesses do you have? Like what? It's not right, we can tell that, but what color cast do we think we see? Just throw out a thing.
Yellow.
A yellow color cast. Anybody else? A greenish? Okay, it's a yellow, green, blue, weird ick, right? It's not quite right. Now, the sweater that she's wearing, let's guess that it's white, but we don't know that. It could be exactly how it shows up there. We don't know that. But some things that we do know are skin color should look a certain way, and teeth should look a certain way in general. Eyeballs should look a certain way. They shouldn't have a yellow cast. So we know there's something going on here. So the memory colors like skin and things that we know, those are always good to look at. We're going to look at our histograms again. So under the window drop down, go to histogram, and that is going to show you in the top corner of it, if you have the same view that I do, where there's those 3 lines for the menu, go to expanded view or all channels view. Actually, go to all channels. So red, green, and blue light are making up this whole image. There's a ton of red, there's a ton of green, there's a ton of blue, but once again, we have nothing over here on the right, which means no pixels in this are really white. They all have a color cast. So sometimes you can just look at your histograms and you can see there's no data here or here or here. And you say, well, if it's red, obviously it's not white. It can't be white. I don't get it. Again, you have to think about what this would look like with the color sucked out of it as a black and white image. There are tones from pure black to pure white and gray in between. So is red a darker color or a lighter color when turned into grayscale? darker, right? Yellow would be on the lighter side. So that makes sense that reds, greens, and blues are all more over here. But she has a white shirt on, we think, and there's nothing, those histograms should be further stretched out so that we have white points. You can either collapse or close that window. Just wanted to show you that it's there. All right. Let's look at one way that's horrible, just so you know what they all are. Go back to your layers panel over here so that we're back working on our main layer. At the bottom of it, that Add Adjustment Layer Yin Yang button, I want you to click on it and choose Color Balance. Okay, this brings up an adjustment with sliders. So you can say, should the cyan be more cyan or more red? And as you're pulling left to right, you're seeing improvements and bad. Sometimes tweaking these sliders, just one of them, will fix your picture. Other times, you need to switch all three. It's a little bit too cyan, so I'm going to pull a little towards red. In the magenta and green, we think there's a little bit too much greenish yellow, so I'm going to pull a little towards magenta. And in the yellows and blues, we thought it might be a little too yellow, so maybe we want to pull it a little towards blue. This is all done by eye. It's not scientific. If your monitor is different than my monitor, the way we display things, you know, we're all going to have different results. I'm literally looking around at you and I'm seeing different versions based on how you would fix this, right? So this is probably the least preferred method because it's by sight and you're just dragging around sliders. But it is one method, okay? Let's take that color balance adjustment layer and dump it completely. So you can either click it and drag it down into the trash can down here, or you can right click on it and say delete the layer. We don't even want it in there. We could just turn it off. I don't even want it in there. So I'm going to say yes, delete that layer. All right, so that's one way. The next way we're going to look at is levels, which we did with that other picture, but it just didn't improve it much. That's a bad example. So go back down to your adjustment layer yin and yang button, click on that, and choose a levels adjustment layer. And again, here's your histogram. We see that we don't really have a white point when we look at this right here. So we're going to take that triangle, the white triangle, and we're going to click and drag it to the right until it starts getting into the mountain or the foothills of these mountains. And notice how that it's improving. It's improving the brightness. This has not taken away the green or yellow cast yet, but it's improving the brightness. So that's a first step. Levels are something you should always, always check on your images. Almost always, they could use a little tweak, and it's usually the brightening. Sometimes there's not a black point. Nothing's true black, and you pull that over and get a much better picture. All right. That was another version. Let's, that one says levels. We're going to leave it as it is. We're just going to turn it off. We're going to turn off the eyedrop or the eyeball next to it. We're going to try another way of doing it. So go down and click on that yin and yang button again. Choose levels again. This time we're going to double click on the name levels 2 over here in your layers panel, and we're going to call this one eyedropper. It's going to be a little bit different. And we're going to go up into our adjustment, and similar to what we did earlier today, we're going to see these 3 different eyedroppers. So we have black, a neutral gray point, and a white point. We're going to use the neutral gray point, and he's wearing a gray t-shirt underneath here. So if we click in there to sample it, it's going to take out that color cast. It knows that that should have been neutral gray. Okay, that's one way of doing it. If you want to Command Z and try the white point instead and sample something that you think should be white, somewhere maybe in her sweater, that may be a better improvement. Okay? If you wanted to sample something that should be 100% pure black, no detail, I'm looking at the pattern behind them and it's probably a navy. I don't think it's meant to be pure black, so I wouldn't want to sample that. So that's using the eyedropper. That can be better, to be honest. You guys like that one a little bit better? Yep. All right. Before we do that, let's just turn off that turn off that eyeball. So all we have left is our background layer with 2 adjustments floating above it. Go back and click on your background layer to activate that one. So highlight the background layer. And the color sampler tool is nested underneath the eyedropper tool. So over on the far left in your tool panel, about 6 tools down is an eyedropper. I want you to go down 3 tools to where it says color sampler tool, the plus sign next to it. Choose that. And all we're going to do is click on a sample point. I'm going to zoom in, Command plus, and we can see that there's a color cast here and his t-shirt. I'm just going to put a color sample point on his gray t-shirt. So I'm going to click there. By doing that, wherever my cursor is now, it's measuring what's underneath it. So do you see how these numbers are changing, most of them? I'm going to just move off to the side here because I don't care about that. What I care about is where I made that number 1 sample point right down here in his t-shirt. And here's the measurements that it came up with. Red, 151, green, 164, and blue, 121. If this is neutral gray, or let me word this better so I don't confuse you from day 2. When colors are neutral and have no color cast, the red, green, and blue numbers are the exact same. So 000 is the same as white, just so you know. 255, 255, 255 is black. So somewhere in between, I don't know, let's just say 100, 100, 100 is a neutral tone of red, for example. If the green number is higher, there's more green added to the red, and it's a more green red. So right now, of these 3 colors, wherever you put your sample point, which color is winning the tug of war? Which color is overbearing? Green. So we know that should be more of a neutral gray. Those numbers should all be similar. So we already know that there's a green cast to that. So if you're ever wondering if there's a color cast to a picture, if you can't tell from your eye, you can always look at this and say, oh, it's obviously green that's winning the war. So that's one way of doing that. By sampling with those eyedroppers, we didn't even have to know what the color cast was. We just let it fix it. But this is a way of using a sample point to actually find out. All right. We can leave this file open, but go back into Bridge. And I want you to open Puppy and Child JPEG. It's the washed out, horrible version of it. And I want you to zoom in. And if you have the same file I do you see 2 sample points already on it, on the arm and the chest of the puppy? Mm-hmm. Okay, so puppy is point 1. Point 1, dirty dog, has been sampled. And what color is winning the war in point 1? Which color is the highest number? The red. The red. The red is 216. Green and blue are sort of closer together. In sample point number 2, what's winning the tug of war? Red. Red. So in general, we know, in case you didn't know, that there's a red cast to this picture. Just in case you didn't know. All right, let's go to our layers panel and make an adjustment layer. So click on the adjustment layer and do levels. And we can see, let's do it manually first. Let's pull our white triangle to the left to brighten it up. And then let's pull our left black triangle in to darken it up. That at least helped with that washed out, icky, no contrast look, right? It just didn't do anything for the color cast. Now to remove the color cast, what color do we think the chest of the dog should be? White. So let's click on the white sampler and come over and sample the chest of the white dog. Maybe. How about we take the black, did I pull the wrong one? No, I did. White is there. How about if we take the black sample point, what here should have no color? I mean, it is pitch black. Maybe the chest of the dog or this spot way behind here. I think the chest of the dog almost looks darker. Click on the chest of the dog. Huge improvement. Okay, we didn't have to pull those sliders first. We could have gone straight to this route, and that might have been a better fix. So let's go Window, History, and let's back it up to the point of just opening the file. So we get this issue version. Click on the adjustment icon in your layers panel, do a levels adjustment layer. And let's just sample with our black and our white to see if we can fix this. So white on the chest of the puppy, black on the low chest of the puppy. Huge improvement, right? Had you done that with that color balance where you're pulling cyan to green and all that, it just would have gotten probably wonkier. Not good. Okay. So how many of you have pictures at home that are kind of ishy like this, that could stand a touch? Probably everybody. Honestly, I would challenge everybody, any photo you've ever taken, open it in Photoshop and go into levels and look, and I doubt that it's perfect. Even if it looks like a great shot, I bet you money you could move the white or the black a little and improve your photo right away. And I'll show you that. So go into Bridge, into this same folder, and let's grab a picture of Callie, this dog at the top. No, let's not. Close that one out. This one is tough because the two colors primarily are black and white. Yeah. So if we get the white snow looking great, we'd probably blow out her chest. And if we get the black looking great, who knows? This is a tough one. So let's not go there right now. Let's go down to the little white dog. Where did you go? Levels dog, this one. And then blow it up a little bit. So if you didn't know any better, you'd probably just think, yeah, this is okay. But guess what? We can fix the levels. Do a levels adjustment layer. And we're going to see real quickly, there's no white point. There's not a lot of black, but that's okay. We don't need to force black. But there is black in this image. The eyeballs, the nose is not pure black. Take the, instead of doing the sample thing, just take the sliders here and move the white one over to brighten it up, and maybe move the black one in a little bit. And then if you want to move that middle slider to adjust the midtones, you sure can. To see before and after, you just click on this eyeball to the left and right of it. It's really dingy. Any photo that you take that has a lot of white in it, so like this picture, a snow picture, a beach picture, they're almost always have this dingy gray look to them. And we'll learn about that more in photography next semester, but it's because your cameras assume, a general rule of thumb is that whatever light strikes something, 18% of that light is bounced back into the camera. And that's the general rule that your camera bases its decisions on. In the case of white, that's not true. More is being bounced, but your camera doesn't believe it, and it goes to that 18% rule, and it makes it all dingy. So any snow picture you have, any white dog, white cat, almost all, you're going to be able to improve them running levels on them really quickly. Back in Bridge. Yes?
The issue you have with the cameras and stuff like that, is that why they bring in filters?
Is that why they bring in filters?
Why they filter in ones?
Not for the issue I just said, for the 18% reflected gray, but we definitely use filters to warm up images in camera, to cool them down. We put on polarizing filters, a UV filter on the end of your lens, absolutely. They're still assuming that whatever light hits the lens is 18% reflected light, even with those filters on. So that doesn't change that. Okay. I'd like you to go to the one called, in Bridge, go to the one called Color Cast. It's the 3 boys. And you guys definitely see a color cast to this. It's not quite right. So go ahead and put on an adjustment layer of levels and use, now when we look at this one, the levels are spread out decently. We have white points, black points, and everything in between. It's the color cast that's the problem. So using the neutral gray and clicking on something that has a color cast is probably your first best step. If it doesn't work out, click somewhere else, try it again. Undo it. The gray sweatshirt might be a good place to click. Maybe even a forehead is showing a little bit too much green and gray. We know what skin color looks like, and it shouldn't be greenish grayish. So you can use those different measurements. Quite often if you use all three of them, it turns into a hot mess. Dark, and then if I use the white, yeah, that's what all three of them looks like. That got bad. Any questions so far? All right. Let's close that file and say don't save. We can close the dog file without saving it. And puppy and child can get closed. And Scott and Danielle can get closed. Let's go into the pictures that I asked you to download. And let's open the file called Trillium. All right. All right, from this file, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go up to the image drop down and we're going to choose duplicate. And it says, what do you want to call it? And this one we're going to call auto tone and say okay. Notice in our tabs, we have two tabs now. We have the original Trillium picture and we have one that looks the exact same called auto tone. From there, we're going to do this again. We're going to go image duplicate. And this next one, we're going to call auto contrast. And we should have a third tab open. Do another one, image duplicate. And call this one auto color. Okay, we now have 4 different tabs open of the same image, so they all look the same depending on which one you're clicking on. Select the one called auto tone. So up here in your tabs, make sure that the one called auto tone is the one that's selected in the brighter letters that we're going to work on. And we're going to go up to the image drop down, and one of the first things is auto tone. We're going to say, okay, go ahead and do that. It's better, right? All right. Let's switch to the next tab over that says auto contrast. And from there, we're going to do an image auto contrast. Okay, that's what that did. And we're going to choose the last one, auto color, and we're going to run the image auto color on that one. So we have 4 different files, the original, and then 3 that we ran an automatic feature on. To look at them side by side, we're going to go under the window drop down, arrange, and we're going to say 4 up. All right. The one that's the active file is going to be the one that's the brightest. So up here, auto color is the one that's the brightest. We're going to take our hand tool. So hold down your space bar and move it around so that you can see that white flower inside that view. And then instead of doing that to all of them, we can let the machine do it. We can say window, arrange, and then we can say match all. So it's going to match the zoom, location, and rotation of that first one. So now we're seeing all 4 examples straight up, side by side. All right, which one do you guys like the best? Let's look at the original one is Trillium. For me, it's down to the lower right. Which one do you guys think is the nicest or the best, at least looking at the level, this zoom level of the flower? Auto color? How about auto tone's decent too, right? I think those 2 are your best. Auto contrast down here still is really yellowy, has a yellow cast to it all. All right, so those are the auto features. So auto tone, which is this one, in my case it's this one, darkens the darks, lightens the lights, and does allow a shift in color. That's what auto tone will do. Auto contrast, this one down here in my case, it's not so great. darkens the darks, lightens the lights, and tries to retain the original color. So you can tell it's pretty similar to that original color. Auto color, this top one up here, darkens the darks, lightens the lights, and tries to correct the color. This one let it shift. This one tried to correct it. So it's definitely, there's still a little bit of yellow in this white. Here it's really been pulled out. It's a lot cooler. So that is a way of looking at these images and letting the auto settings work. But I told you auto, well, I didn't tell you this. Auto is not always your friend by any means. So let's close these out. Don't save them. So that was an image that had whites, greens, yellows, blacks, some kind of muddy browns. It had some color to it. Go back into Bridge, and now we are going to open that image of the black and white dog, Callie, at the very top. Okay. We're not going to duplicate it 3 times and run through that, but with it open, let's do an image auto tone. Little bit of a shift. Undo that, Command Z. Do an image auto contrast. Little shift, not much. Undo that and do an image auto color. Little bit of a shift again. None of these are super great or super bad because it's all black and white. The original file ends up being probably the best. What Photoshop is doing whenever it's an auto setting is that it's looking to make the histogram as spread out and realistic as possible, but in fact, it's basically blacks and whites. So spreading it out just doesn't do anything. So auto anything, it might be the first step you take to see if it fixes the picture, but by and large, especially as a graphic designer, you're not going to be playing around with the auto buttons ever. You're going to be going into true editing modes, taking out color casts. But it exists, and I wanted to share that with you, just so that you know that, you know, I could do auto levels, or I could do auto contrast or something. It's not the worst. It's just definitely not the best.
Can you do the batch too?
Pardon?
Can you do the batch as well?
Yeah. You can.
Sometimes you take the, you know, like say it's kind of overcast, you take a whole bunch of pictures,
Yep.
and then you do the batch to correct the tone.
If they're all the same, yes. In Camera Raw, which we're going to look at also, you can correct one photo, and all the corrections that you made to that photo can be applied to the rest of them too. So if everything was really cool and cloudy and underexposed, with a couple of clicks, you can apply that same thing to everything. Yep. Okay, so that's that. We talked about adjustment layers, and last one I want to show you is curves. So do you still have Callie up here? And nothing's been done to her. Hopefully this is the original. If not, go to your history panel and go back to the open so that you get that original file with nothing changed. I'm just going to switch back to the move tool because I hate it when my tool is something specific and I see it floating around and it's not what I want. Go down to the bottom of the layers panel, click on the adjustment layer yin and yang button, and this time choose curves. So the difference between curves and levels is that levels had 3 points that you could tweak. It had a white point, a black point, and a midpoint. Curves, so let's look at this scary math looking chart that just popped up. Here's your histogram again. We see a tower down here showing that there's some blacks, there's lots of grays, and then there's lots of white tones. That's still our histogram, and previously under levels we could have adjusted just the black, just the white, just the midpoint. In curves, this diagonal line going across it represents the point directly below it on that grid, however you would explain that. So this point right here, the dead center, is exactly this point down here in our histogram. Meaning, if we wanted to, we could tweak all 255 points. We could make the black point a little brighter or darker. We could make the 254 black point lighter or darker. You would never want to do that. It would be a hot mess. You don't want a lot of changes on your curves, but I'll show you a quick way of how it works. You can come in here and click on the center point of the curve, Click and drag it up. Notice how the image gets brighter. You can go ahead and do that, just don't let go. Click and drag it down. The center point is getting darker. You are targeting that center measurement on your histogram below and tweaking it. So a lot of times people will come in and they'll pull this midpoint up a little to brighten it. Sometimes they take this black point and pull it down a little, or that was a bad example. Undo that if you did, Command Z. That was a terrible example. I should have never done that. Don't touch these corner points. Leave white, white, and black, black where they are. Go in a little and tweak another point on the inside if you want to. So I'll pull this one down a little, pull this one up, you know, something like that. This is where it gets its name curves. Do you see how I bent it all? Really what I did was I took this point of gray and told it to be higher. I took this point of white and said be lower. I pulled the curve down. I have created quite a mess, and you can also by tweaking this curves way too much. To undo it, underneath the curves you have some icons, and go back. The arrow that goes backwards brings you back to a normal curve. So you could go in and pull on the curves. That's risky. Do you guys see on the left-hand side there's eyedroppers again? Let's take the white eyedropper, and what do we think is the whitest white point on here that should be white? Somewhere in the snow maybe. I click on that. It changes my white point. Click on a mid-tone. What's a mid-tone? Something that's kind of a grayish, dull, maybe in the snow or the ice. I can sample that. I can click on what should be a black point. And it's changed my curves. The thing is with a black and white photo, this was tough. I'm not sure I like this either. So I'm going to do a reset again. I'm going to click that back arrow again. The favorite tool of mine on any adjustment layer, if it exists, is right above your eyedroppers. It's a hand with double arrows. That's called the Targeted Adjustment Tool. It's a scrubby hand. That one to me is the coolest because you don't have to know where things fall on this curve line. It figures it out for you. So if you bring your cursor over into the image, you see an eyedropper. Let's hover over the face near the eye and say, you know what, it's so black here. I want it to be a little bit lighter so I can see what's going on. Click and hold down with your mouse and pull up or down, and it's going to sample that exact hue of black and make it brighter or darker. It put an anchor point on the curve where that black showed up and improved it. So when I let go, I can see, here's the anchor point right over here. That was the color, that was the tone of black that I was targeting. I can also now say, you know what, he needs to be a little bit brighter in his, so I'm going to sample this part of his neck hair, and I'm going to make it a little brighter. It put a sample point for me right where that corresponded to that pixel of color. So on a black and white image, this is hard, but on a color image, you can go in and say, you know, bump this area up a little, bump this down a little. Don't go crazy. A couple of adjustment points are good. The minute you get 5, 6, 7 adjustment points, it starts to look bad and it's not a good correction. So the targeted adjustment tool, whenever that exists within something, all that means is you click on it and you go in here and you visually say, make this brighter, darker, make this brighter or darker. Let's try that with another image. Go back to bridge. Let's choose tower. And go ahead and put a curves adjustment layer on that. And then choose your targeted adjustment tool and come over maybe to the bricks and say, brighten them up a little bit. But oops, now my sky is dark. I want to go into the blue and darken that up a little bit. The thing that you have to be careful of is whatever pixel is underneath it, it's sampling it. So if it's that blue of the sky and you make it darker, any pixel that's that blue anywhere else is also going to change. It's not smart enough to know it's just sky. So if this truck happened to be the same color blue, it would be tweaking that as well. So you can try a multitude. You can make a couple of targeted points. You can go in and sample the white tool and say, you know what, this cloud should be white. It's not. There's a combination of lots of different tools to fix things. Okay? All right, that was a crash course in color correcting. So let me explain your homework. And I don't have a Dropbox built in Blackboard yet because this is different from the past, so if you get done really quickly and I don't have it done yet, don't start yelling at me. Give me a minute to do this. I'm going to have you from this folder nope. Go back to Bridge. Your homework is going to be from the Photoshop Week 2 Pictures folder that you downloaded. I want you to take this picture, Sheboygan Lighthouse 2, and I want you to fix it using all the skills we learned today. And I'm going to specifically tell you in Blackboard I need you to straighten it. I need you to fix levels, black, white, gray point, whatever that might be. And then when you're done, I want you to crop it down to a size that's 10 inches wide. The height can be whatever it needs to be. And a 72 dot per inch resolution. Everything you do to it, I need you to do non-destructively. So you're going to send me a PSD file, and I'm going to see your levels adjustment layer. I'm going to see your curves. I'm going to see whatever you've done to it is going to be an adjustment layer that I can see. If you cropped and straightened it, when I click on the crop tool, it should be non-destructive. I should see the original picture just tipped a little bit where I could change my cropping. How you do that is just make sure that when you crop that deselect or throw away, discard pixels, make sure that's not turned on. Keep them all. Okay, that keeps it non-destructive. So you're going to fix that image to your liking and resize it, and you're going to put that in a Dropbox. And I'm going to have you work on the girl file as well and practice with the tools. And again, this is a crash course in it today, so I'm not expecting perfection, but with the girl, I'm going to have you get rid of, and I'll put this all on Blackboard, just didn't know how far we'd get. I'm going to have you fix her red eye, fix any obvious blemishes, not necessarily freckles, and take out the necklace. I'm going to go and look and see what size that is, if it needs to be resized, and I'll let you know right now. Yeah, right now this is a high-res file. It's 6 inches by 10 inches at 300. If you were to send that to me as a PSD file, which it needs to be with all your layers, it'd be a really big file. So at the end, keep it a PSD, but go in here and change this resolution to be 72 and tell it to resample, meaning it can throw away and it's going to physically get smaller. So the height and width are fine. You're just going to take it down to 72 DPI or PPI. Okay? You're uploading PSDs in both cases. Any questions? Yes. Two different Dropboxes. Yep. I'll have 2 different Dropboxes for you. This will be due by the start of class, so it's due by 7:59 a.m. next week. I would recommend you just get done while things are fresh in your mind. Okay? Any other questions? All of these videos are going to be on because a lot of what I talked about is not in your book. It's extra above and beyond, so if you want to go back and watch these. And I'll probably even make some snippets that are just clean and perfect on different topics and add those. Yeah. They will be, yep. They're getting published to YouTube right now, and then I get the link and I put it right in Blackboard. So you'll be able to click. That'll be done in a little bit too because they're still uploading.